regulatory program aimed at reducing California's greenhouse gases. CEQA provides a process for evaluating the environmental effects of projects undertaken or approved by public agencies. If a project is not exempt from CEQA, an initial study is prepared to determine whether the project may have a significant effect on the environment. If initial study shows that the project may have a significant effect on the environment, the lead agency must prepare an environmental impact report. A focused EIR expedites the review process by limiting the analysis to project-specific effects that were not discussed in the analysis of the underlying regulation. AB 880 will extend the existing authorization for environmentally mandated projects to use a focused EIR. This will apply to projects that will reduce greenhouse gas to comply with the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006 regulations. I want to thank you ahead of time and respectfully ask for a aye vote. I have Bob Lucas here representing the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance as well to testify and provide any technical support.
Thank you very much. Bob Lucas, representing the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. We are the sponsor of this bill. We're bringing it forward as an extension of the Perez bill of last year, AB 1846, that clarified that the focus EIR that applied to pollution control equipment applied to AB 32 projects. We would like to extend the application of the focused EIR to include energy efficiency projects covered under AB or required under AB 32. That requires an expansion of the scope of those projects that can make use of a focused EIR. And I know that there has been concerns that have been raised about the appropriateness of that expanded scope or what the right scope ought to be. And so we're very pleased that the committee staff was able to sit down and work with us on a form of the bill that we think narrows it enough so that we take care of the immediate concerns about scope while we continue to work with others that are interested in the topic of scope to see if there is more appropriate language further down the road. But for now, as the author has indicated, we're very happy to accept the staff's proposed amendments to narrow the scope of this bill.
Okay,
thank you.
Other witnesses in favor?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Brenda Coleman here on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and just like to say that we were pleased to support this similar measure as a job creator last year, and we are pleased to support it again as a job creator. We think this is a very important, very timely measure that will help regulated entities be AB 32 compliant and also will help stimulate the economy with job creation as well. So thank you, and we look forward to working with the Assembly member as this bill moves forward.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jose Mejia, California State Council Laborers. My organization is a member of CEBA and has been for a number of years, and I have the pleasure of sitting on their executive board as well. And as an organization representing the laborers, I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in favor? Any opposition?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I should probably move faster. Michael Endicott with Sierra Club, California. This time we did get a letter in, but in time. And I do appreciate the amendments that are being offered by the committee and that the author is committing to take. We have to go back and analyze them more closely. So I can't remove our opposition, but we do appreciate that the author is working with the committee, and we'll take a look at those. Thank you very much.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the California League of Conservation Voters, due to the recent amendments taken by the author, we have removed our opposition and have gone neutral, and I would like to thank the author for working with everyone.
Thank you.
Jenna Price on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League. We echo Sierra Club, actually, and we do still need to review the current amendments. Thank you very much. And we do keep our opposition on there.
Okay, thank you. Any other opposition? If not, I would recommend a motion to do pass as amended. The author has, I think, made substantial progress in making this a good bill. Has been moved by Ms. Grove, second by Mr. Monning. Mr. Dickens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to confirm, trying to absorb the substance of the suggested amendments you've been working on. It looks as if now the bill would authorize a focused EIR where there is an agency directing that additional pollution control equipment be installed, and it's limited to that.
The actual language, and perhaps the consultant
Sure.
can better address this, but the
I
actual...
do have the language. I was just trying to look through it.
I
really.
think that the more important operative aspect of the language is the restriction to projects that have direct emission reductions. The pollution control equipment aspect is already in the statute.
Okay, yeah, it looked like it was all where there'd been some agency, ARB or otherwise, that had directed the installation of equipment to achieve the emission reductions. Is that,
Well,
is it more than that?
Excuse me. Lawrence, how broad do you interpret direct emission reductions? I mean, I think that's the question that you're asking.
No, I mean, I was just trying to actually, it could be direct emission reductions other than those that have been ordered by a state or local agency, as long as the entity is installing equipment that would lead to direct emission reductions.
Yes, and this bill is limited to direct emission reductions in implementing AB 32, so it's greenhouse gas emission reductions. And I believe the last section of the bill does contain a list of the agencies that are affected by it.
Mr. Dickinson, would you like Mr. Lindblom's commentary on it?
Sure. Yeah, sure. That would be helpful.
So, Mr. Dickinson, your description regarding pollution control equipment accurately reflects existing law. Mandated pollution control equipment is eligible for the focused DIR, and so the bill would add a direct emission reduction that's required by the Air Resources Board, and that's a term that's defined in AB 32. So it's, in our view, it's a foreseeable action that can be addressed in the CEQA review of the regulation when it's adopted.
Okay, thank you. I was really going to the front end of that as opposed to the back end, which was it needs to be pursuant to either the ARB or some other direction to achieve the direct emission reductions.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies it. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Other comments? I didn't hear a second. I heard Ms. Groves. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Monning second. Any further questions, discussion? If not, clerk, please call the roll. Oh, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for that vote.
Thank you.
Motion is due pass as amended. Chesbro.
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight. Brownlee. Dickinson. Dickinson, aye. Grove. Grove, aye. Halderman. Halderman, aye. Huffman. Monning. Monning, aye. Skinner.
That bill is out. Thank you, Mr. Pettis. Mr. Nastande, we now have AB 837, item 7. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I guess to start off, have you accepted the amendment suggested in the analysis?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consumers today value products with an environmental benefit, and some manufacturers may use misleading wording to affect purchase decisions and help sales. In 2006, AB 2147 by Senator Harman was passed by this committee and signed into law to prohibit a person from falsely labeling a plastic food or beverage container as compostable. This bill would similarly prohibit a person from falsely advertising the recycled content of a plastic food or beverage container. AB 837 simply promotes truth in advertising by requiring manufacturers and suppliers to be able to back up their recycled content claims upon request from a member of the public or state agency. Mr. Chair, the attempt of this bill is we have a lot of mandates, a lot of guidelines to go green in California in many different areas. Some I support, some I don't, but I think it's a goal that we have set forth as a state. And what I think is most important since we've done that is to make sure those jobs that we're creating the demand for are done here in California. A lot of this recycled material comes in from China and other areas. We don't know what their recycled content is. So simply asking if you're going to make a claim, then please back up that claim. So that's my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Witnesses in favor?
Good afternoon, Chair, Chesbro and committee members. Nick Lapis with Californians Against Waste. We support the intent of this legislation. However, we feel that the language needs some additional work. That said, this bill would require manufacturers to back up their environmental claims, which is something that we strongly support. Currently, the Federal Trade Commission's green guides address unqualified recycled claims, but this bill provides California companies with a one-stop shop for compliance with those regulations. As it is right now, we'd like to see the bill move forward, and we're going to work with the author's office on specific wording, make sure there's no conflict with RPPC or other statutes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other witnesses in favor? Any opposition?
Mr. Chairman and members, Ralph Simoni representing the California-Nevada Soft Drink Association. Much like the support witness, we support the intent of the bill in order to curb untruthful environmental advertising claims. However, this bill is very vaguely drafted. It has very ambiguous terms, and what we fear are the unintended consequences of this bill. And let me just provide you with a couple of examples. What if a soft drink bottler stated that we will have 20% recycled content in our plastic packages, and that is a national average? Number one, is that advertising? Number two, what if in California they only had 16% because of where they source their containers, but in the remainder of the states they had the sufficient 24% to have a national average? Would this be an actionable event under the bill? And when you look at the actual terms of the bill and how it's enforced, it has a very awkward enforcement mechanism. In fact, what it says is that upon request by the member of the public, does that mean that anyone in California, or it doesn't even say somebody from California, a member of the public can make a request on anybody making whatever an environmental or recycled content claim is? And if they don't get a response that has to qualify in a format that's easy to understand and scientifically accurate, then they go to a county and the county imposes civil fines. Is there a judgment required? Is there a demand letter required?
So is there an enforcement mechanism that you would suggest to the author that you could live with?
Well, I don't know, but something that is verifiable, something that requires a prerequisite of some sort that would assure that there is accuracy. And, you know, for example, when you look at who can make the request, you could have an NGO, you could have some large membership organization on their website hit, you know, please ask XYZ company for a certification of their recycled content claim. And you don't have 100% compliance, then what happens? You go to a city, county, or whatever and ask them to impose a civil fine on what basis? Anyway, Assemblyman Chesbro, there is a very vague and ambiguous standard, and the enforcement mechanism needs a lot of work. And for those reasons and the unintended consequences that might cause, we must oppose the bill in its current form.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Assemblymember Chesbro, members of the committee, John Hewitt on behalf of the Grocery Manufacturers Association. Like Mr. Simoni, we also support the intent of the bill and believe that uniform marketing standards and truth in advertising are essential for consumers to make value comparisons and purchase decisions. However, we believe AB 837 is unnecessary at this time because it, and quite frankly, is a solution in search of a problem. We don't believe that, or there hasn't at least been brought to our knowledge, any factual demonstration that manufacturers are making these false advertising claims. Secondly, as Mr. Simoni said, and I'll just echo those concerns about the civil enforcement mechanisms. Chair Chesbro, you had asked about an enforcement mechanism that we would deem appropriate. We believe that the FTC currently has the appropriate enforcement mechanism and a system in place to deal with complaints and enforce false advertising in the environmental arena, and therefore we believe this bill is unnecessary and would ask for your no vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other witnesses in opposition? Members, I'm inclined to support the bill, although there's criticism from sort of both sides of the issue relative to the need for work, and so I think we can encourage the author to work to fine-tune it and hopefully win support on, well, the CAW's is support unless amended. I think the others, the industry side was opposed unless amended, but maybe those could be brought together and make it so that it's workable and acceptable on the industry side as well. Mr. Monning?
Yeah, I just want to thank the author for advancing this. I do think truth in advertising is important, particularly representations about steps being taken by manufacturers about environmental aspects of their products or packaging. I know years ago there was a lot of focus on cereal manufacturers labeling natural cereal when there was no evidence of use of or reliance on natural products. So I think in this field of trying to promote environmental stewardship and inform consumers of steps that have been taken by manufacturers, this rewards those who are making earnest steps and labeling accordingly. So I appreciate your bringing it forward. Look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dickinson?
I share Mr. Manning's thanks to you for bringing this forward. Just a couple of comments for what it's worth. I don't think it's a problem that any member of the public could ask for this as well as a state agency. I do think that any consumer ought to be able to get this information. We're not requiring that it go on the container itself, which we obviously do with a lot of labeling with respect to ingredients and other characteristics of products, nutritional value, and so on. Where I thought you might want to concentrate a little energy on refining the language is on how civil penalties would get imposed in the first place, and what the process for that would be, whether it's pre-adjudication or post-adjudication, whether it would require litigation in order to seek the civil penalty, that kind of stuff, Mr. Nastandi, but because I think that's not entirely clear what's intended there. But as I say, for what it's worth, my thoughts, I do support you being able to continue to move the bill and hopefully come to an accommodation with all parties to the benefit of consumers.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions, motion? Mr. Huffman moves. Mr. Dickinson seconds. Would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the comments from members, and I understand some of the arguments from the opposition, and I do agree with Mr. Dickinson's suggestions on the enforcement mechanisms. There are areas that we can probably tighten that and have a better process for that. But I also agree with Mr. Monning said, and I think you could also, I think it's okay if people ask to prove the content of that material. That, to me, doesn't seem to be a hardship. You just produce the evidence that you claim to have. So I don't think that's an undue burden. It's actually a competitive disadvantage for those manufacturers that are doing what they say they're doing, which is 100% recyclable material, and the other companies are left to everybody's best guess then. So I think that's perfectly acceptable to ask people to prove their content of their materials. But I do appreciate the comments of the chair, and I do look forward to working with the committee and suggestions to improve the bill going forward. So I thank you.
Okay, so motion is second. If there's no further discussion, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do pass as amended.
Yes, do pass as amended. Thank you.
Chesbro?
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight? Brownlee? Dickinson? Aye. Dickinson, aye. Grove? Halderman? Huffman? Aye. Huffman, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Skinner? Aye. Skinner, aye.
It's got 5 votes. That's out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Swanson. This would be AB 900, which is item 10 in your agenda packets.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. AB 900 is a bill that was generated out of there ought to be a law contest in my district, and First of all, let me say that I understand there were some concerns around the bill's current mandate, suggestion it was a mandate, and we will be amending the bill to remove the mandate because the intent was not to require districts that didn't have the resources to be able to.
So you'd have an out for the school district that couldn't afford it, or
Yeah.
how would you?
Yeah, we just it'll be their option.
Okay.
But the idea there is that the ones that are doing it now voluntarily represent good practices, we believe. But if you just can't afford it because you can't buy the bins, then we understand that. So that's the that would be the ideal of the amendment to just remove the state mandate. AB 900 provides a simple and logical fix to the waste in schools. The student Angelica Kong, who at Piedmont High School was the winner of our Ought to Be a Law contest. Also, to address the committee's comments, my office is working on a language to specify the types of recycling bins a district is required to maintain. As you know, California school districts dispose of a large amount of waste per year, and this waste represents a significant loss of natural resources and the school and funds to the school district. AB 900 addresses waste in schools by allowing districts to provide recycling bins on the campus of each public elementary and secondary school. Along with recycling bins, school districts can maintain composting bins to the extent feasible. School districts would be responsible for providing the bins and deciding the number of bins needed on each campus depending on the school size. I'm going to ask my witnesses to self-introduce, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Yes, first witness in favor.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Jeff Becerra. I'm with StopWaste.org. We are the public agency responsible for waste reduction in Alameda County, and we urge your support of AB 900 because recycling bins should be a standard component of school infrastructure in the state. Recycling infrastructure would allow schools to reduce waste going to landfills, reduce their need for raw materials, and as we heard earlier in this committee, with composting of green waste, reduce greenhouse gases. This bill has the potential to lower waste collection and hauling costs for some schools, and it also would provide teaching opportunities for the waste reduction principles of reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, which is compost, of course. Uniform school-based infrastructure for collecting recyclables and organics across the state will help institutionalize recycling and compost programs and build buy-in at the district level rather than just the classroom level. So on behalf of StopWaste.org, I urge your aye vote on this bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Nicole Wortelman on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco. San Francisco supports the bill as last year they were able to exceed 75% waste diversion within the city, and every little bit helps.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Nick Lapis from Californians Against Waste. We're in strong support.
Thank you very much.
Chair members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the Conference of Directors of Environmental Health, we are in support.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in favor? Any opposition? Well, as somebody who's advocated waste reduction and recycling for going on 40 years, professionally and politically, it's always been a mystery to me how few schools have engaged in recycling and composting programs, if nothing else, to reduce their garbage bill. And because in many cases, in fact, it is very cost effective. I'm glad that you recognize, however, that it's not always cost effective. And so in this era, I know you're a great advocate for schools, so you'd be the last person to try to make life more difficult for our school districts. But building that flexibility, I think, is important. In the process of trying to narrow the definition of the bins, be sure and leave open the possibility, because in some communities, the commercial waste haulers will, in fact, provide recycling bins, and they might do that for the value of the material, and when the markets improve, maybe even pay the school district. So I think be sure you leave the language flexible enough so that there's the prospect of a relationship with the local local government or a private waste hauler to provide that service for the school district.
Sure, and I would appreciate, Mr. Chairman, any suggestions staff would give us moving forward. We think that we're attempting here to put recycling and composting on the agenda of each school, and then they can make a decision, about the resources. But we want the issue on the table.
Great. Okay, Mr. Monning.
Yeah, I just want to thank the author and also to acknowledge the student who brought this forward. And I fully support the objectives, and I've shared with the author, and he addressed it in his opening comments, the perception in some of the school districts I represent. They have a half-time janitor serving a whole campus, and any unfunded mandate is not going to be received. You've assured us there's language to the extent feasible. I think as this moves along, even some more explicit kind of reassurances to school districts that on the one hand, we're encouraging them to explore and implement, but that it is optional at this point. And with that commitment you've made, I'm very supportive of the objectives. Another issue that was raised by my staff related to the composting and potential health issues of attracting rats or mice or other vermin, particularly in rural areas. And I'm sure there's measures to mitigate against that, but I think it is a public health issue that goes along with composting. I don't know if you'd have a comment on that issue, but again, appreciate your bringing this forward.
Okay. Well, thank you on that, on the composting question.
Our experience in Alameda County, we have a good number of success stories that we could use as examples to mitigate those issues.
Yeah, and I would be very open, Mr. Monty, to any language suggestion that helps, because that's not our intent at all. We're trying to get everyone on board through cooperation. Yeah.
Okay, let's see, Ms. Grove and then Dr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Swanson, for making it clear that it wasn't going to be a mandate. I was going to vote no because we already owe them $2 billion in mandates that we're not paying them, and to establish another mandate. But I do support the issue about bringing recycling to schools and letting students participate on a willingness basis. Without the mandate in the bill and you taking that out, isn't there already a mechanism? You already can have voluntary participation, correct, at schools or not?
Well, yeah, you can have voluntary participation at school. What we're trying to do here with the structure of the bill is present this to the school districts as something that we are asking them to consider doing if they can afford to do it. And there's also many times what happens in these school districts is that the students themselves are the ones pushing, for like in Piedmont, they're doing this already, and a number of school districts they're doing it. We just want to make sure that we're not saying to a district or to a school that doesn't have the resources that you must do this, and that's why we want to remove the mandate.
Okay, but aside with the mandate being gone now, we're kind of in the same situation with or without the bill, is the way I understand.
Not really. No, not really, because it's they have to consider it. They will just not do it, but the bill makes it so that we're suggesting that this happens at the school district, so that they will take the action to say we decide to opt out of this.
But it's not a mandate. They're not going to be required to do it at all.
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
That's the idea.
Thank you.
I mean, if you voted against it, it'd break my heart. That's.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. Mr. Swanson, I really want to thank you. You have balanced the concerns of rural counties who have to prioritize funding when we can't afford transportation for the kids in our district. It's a very difficult thing to prioritize recycling. Recycling is certainly something I support, although my own preference is reuse because it takes less petroleum. That's not always an option, and I appreciate that. I don't know if anything changes as the result of the bill as is. I think it's a lofty goal, and I hope that at some point the schools in California do have the resources that they may all enact it. A survey taken in 2003 by CalRecycle indicated that over 92% of the respondents were already participating, and that was 8 years ago. So my hope is that that number is actually much higher, and I commend you for caring about this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think in the long run, we're going to find out that that it actually saves money in the long run to recycle this way. And I think that hopefully will be most convincing facts about this. Thank you, though, for your comments.
Any other questions from committee members?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm filling in temporarily for our chair.
Well, you're...
All right. Should we take that as your close, Mr.
Yes,
Swanson?
Mr. Chairman. That's my close.
All right. There's a motion by Mr. Monning.
Second.
Second by Ms. Skinner. Please call the roll. This is with the author's amendments.
Do pass as amended, correct?
Yeah, as amended, and we will get copies of amendments to the committee.
Chesbro? Aye. Chesbro, aye. Knight? Brownlee? Brownlee, aye. Dickinson? Grove? Halderman? Huffman? Huffman, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Skinner? Skinner, aye.
Thank you very much, and we will look forward to any suggestions that the committee has.
Thank you, Mr.
Bill
Swanson.
going forward. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to go to the one consent item. That's item 17, AB 1314. Is there a motion for consent? Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Get to it. Do pass to recommend consent. AB 1314. Chesbro.
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight. Brownlee. Brownlee, aye. Dickinson. Grove. Grove, aye. Halderman. Halderman, aye. Huffman. Huffman, aye. Monning. Monning, aye. Skinner. Skinner, aye.
Consent is out. Next, we'll go to item 15, which is AB 1285 Fuentes. That's being presented by Mr. Huffman. And be sure and grill him really bad here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pinch hitting for Assemblymember Fuentes today, and this is AB 1285. This is a bill that will establish a program to hopefully drive investments to our communities and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The author is interested in this concept of harnessing our environmental policy, in this case AB 32, in order to generate jobs in our communities doing good projects with multiple benefits. And so there are three basic goals to this bill. First, to promote greater investments in our communities to spur job growth. Second, to allow local governments and NGOs to aggregate small increments of greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, to provide creative financing mechanisms so that we can bring these projects to fruition that otherwise might not have penciled out or been implemented. It's important to remember that there currently are no statewide incentives for local governments or NGOs to undertake these kind of projects and help us achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals. There are no state programs to coordinate or guide the development of these types of programs, and there are no incentives specifically to provide or encourage the financing of these projects. And so Mr. Fuentes has emphasized that this bill is something of a work in progress. He continues to meet with a broad range of stakeholders and wanted to express his intention to continue those discussions as the bill moves forward. The bill does call for the creation of a new program, and you only get away with that when you're the appropriations chairman. So I think that speaks volumes. But in any event, he is committed to continue working with you, Mr. Chair, as well on the technical issues. There were a couple issues brought up in the staff analysis. One was a concern that the bill might be construed as mandating offsets, which was not the author's intention, and he has agreed to take the suggested committee amendment in that regard. The other was whether the projects called for under the bill would be real and verifiable and not double counted. And the author does include language in the bill right now that he feels and I feel adequately address that, but again, happy to continue working with the committee on that going forward. So with that, Mr. Chair, I have with me a few witnesses. Efren's not joining us? All right. I have Tim Anderson from the Sonoma County Water Agency.
My understanding from talking to Mr. Fuentes on the floor, myself this morning, was that he, with regards to the question of making sure that the offsets are legitimate, not double counted, that the committee suggested committee amendment on that subject he was accepting. I know it's maybe hard for you to be in a position to answer for him, but that's what I asked him about it, and he said yes. And his staff or the sponsors?
I'm being urged to nod approvingly.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay. Just want to make sure we know what we're voting on here.
Well said.
So please proceed. Witnesses in favor?
My name is Tim Anderson with Sonoma County Water Agency. I'm pleased here, Mr. Chairman, to be speaking in support of the bill. Sonoma County Water Agency is a major water wholesaler. We supply water for 600,000 people, Sonoma, Marin County. We have a commitment to climate protection issues, so we are working to be a carbon-free water supplier by 2015. We sponsor an AB 811 energy independence program that funds renewable power and energy efficiency programs at $250,000 per week at homes and businesses in Sonoma County. So we do have a commitment in this area. We're very pleased to see this bill moving forward today. Local agencies and our NGO partners strongly support projects that reduce emissions. However, as you know, it's complicated to put together the financial packages that allow these projects to be built. And we believe that AB 1285 represents a solution to that dilemma. If local agencies can use a state program to access additional revenue for projects, we can leverage other funding sources and with our partners to develop and implement more projects. For local agencies like ours, every day we deal with water efficiency, watershed and land stewardship, and energy production. In each of these cases, we could develop new projects under AB 1285 to maximize emissions reductions from our activities. Furthermore, we want every one of our reductions to be real and verifiable, and we want these reductions to count toward the state's goals for emissions reduction caps. We understand developing this program to fit into AB 32 will be complicated, and we are up to this challenge and pledge to work with other stakeholders and the author to make sure we get this right.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Tim O'Connor. I work for Environmental Defense Fund. Let me just say that we think that there is still a tremendous amount of opportunity to reduce emissions at the small scale level, that when you look at them individually, it may not amount to much. But when you look at them in the whole or in the collective, you can really get at tremendous opportunity. Opportunity that results in emissions right where we need it the most, that drives economic investment and incentives to the communities that could use it the most, and puts jobs in the areas where we have seen very traditionally depressed economic times, in particular in some of the areas that are the hardest hit by the economic downturn. What I'm talking about is community aggregation or aggregation of small tons. EDF has come up with an idea called the Climate for Communities. We worked with San Francisco Community Power a couple of years ago to think about and to create a program where you could have replacement of refrigerators in people's houses, very old, inefficient refrigerators, with new, efficient refrigerators, that if you replace one, it's not that big of a deal. But if you replace 10,000 of them, and you can get them to maybe turn on and turn off when the energy is peaking the highest, and you can get reduced energy use just generally, you can start displacing actual megawatts, peaker power plants that don't need to be built. And we're talking about real reductions of emissions. These are the types of opportunities that bring lower energy bills to communities. And then if you imagine a pastor standing up in his church in front of 300 people saying, who wants to participate in this program? Who from this congregation wants to work to get together to have an investment opportunity in our houses and reduce emissions? And that church is able to get those people to come together and quantify the amount of reductions that are associated with it. You can get a real flow of money to those people. And that's what we're really working to do here, something innovative. We realize it's going to take some effort to plug it into the program. And we realize that there are some issues associated with energy efficiency reductions, renewable energy generation, that are real issues that we need to work through. But those shouldn't be the stopping points to preventing us from thinking about innovative opportunities to drive investment and to create jobs in some of the areas that's needed the most. we recommend that you vote aye on the bill today, and we're committed to working with the author and all the other stakeholders in this effort to make sure that we can create this really opportune program at the best time that we've seen it.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in favor?
Yes, Chair. Reed Addis, on behalf of Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. I'll limit my testimony and just say we're in support for some of the very same reasons as EDF mentioned on aggregation. Our work in LA, we really can see doing way more projects, especially along the rivers, with a program like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses in favor?
Chris Mock on behalf of the Audubon Society and Peninsula Open Space Trust, and we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your brevity. Any other supporters? Any opposition?
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Erin Rogers. I work with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I run our climate and energy program in the western United States, and we've been very involved in AB 32, especially around a lot of these issues around disadvantaged communities and offsets. We definitely share the same intentions as the author and the supporters of this bill. We definitely want to see creative investment in low-income communities, but we have some real concerns with the way this bill is structured, and I'm just having a hard time figuring out how you could ever actually accurately quantify emission reductions in capped sectors, because you'll end up double counting those emission reductions because they're already in the cap. If the church wants to come together and do energy efficiency retrofits in their church, they're already going to get a benefit from that because they will be paying less for their electricity. And the utility gets a benefit from that because it has a lower compliance obligation under the cap. So we have concerns about double counting, and we have concerns about this mechanism in general. I think there are better ways to accomplish the goals that they've set out.
Okay, at this point, if the actual author was sitting there, I hope he's got staff listening, I would say please work with them. Hopefully the rest of you will get back. Thank you.
Andy Katz representing Breathe California, and like the Union of Concerned Scientists, we are very interested in the that this bill and other programs that are implementing AB 32 remain in line with principles that are very important to avoid double counting, to ensure that reductions that occur pursuant to AB 32 are real and permanent and verifiable and additional, and ensure that the essential qualities and equivalency that's very important to make sure that we're actually getting the reductions that we need. I want to request that there be clarification that the committee amendments are actually going to be accepted. I think that particularly item number 2 ensures that there wouldn't be double counting. The other amendments make sure that this bill remains in line with the progress that's occurring at the Air Resources Board, where staff at ARB are working very well to ensure that there are offset protocols that meet these principles. So I want to strongly encourage the committee to accept these amendments because I think these amendments are important for keeping this program consistent with the purposes of AB 32.
Well, as I said earlier, I received the author's commitment on the assembly floor earlier today, so we will be moving with those amendments.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Skinner?
So I know you just clarified, but just so I fully understand, so if we move this as amended, it would exclude projects from within a capped sector?
Yes.
Okay, and it would deal with the issues around quantification. Okay. I'm going to support the bill. I basically am not a large supporter of offsets because they are tricky to count. But but let's be real right now. There's a huge offset market right now. And while it's not as large yet under AB 32 because we've not put all of our regs in place, internationally offsets are, a growing business. And as a person that founded and ran a program where local governments, cities, basically ran climate protection programs and did inventories of their community's emissions, so had very strong quantification protocols, and then encouraged activities, both initiated activities that the local government had control over for emissions reduction, and then initiated activities for the community too, and had very good protocols for counting that. As we watched, and this program was started in 1992 and continues today, there's over 800 U.S. cities now involved in over 2,000 cities worldwide. As we watched over the 20-odd years as the offset market developed, we basically saw that, say we might call it distributed generation or other small type of activities, efficiency activities and others, would be excluded from this kind of offset market. And partly they would be excluded because if we take electricity generation for the moment, and we're talking energy efficiency projects, as you all mentioned, the utility, if it sees that drop, it's going to get, it basically says, well, the drop in demand or the drop in our necessity to produce electricity is something we need to count. Now, they may have not, and I'm just doing a very kind of analogy here, they may not have done a thing to in any way affect 25% of that drop. And 25% of that drop could have been activities that, say, whether it's the church example or a city-run program or something. And yet, as our current, and I say our, I mean the standard, whether it's international, national, or state, our current protocols for emissions quantification and for project status qualification under offset markets would not allow it. Well, that to me is unfair. What is the motivation then for a community group or any other type of entity that might have a huge influence on those of us who, in effect, our actions, create emissions? If they have the ability to affect that and in a quantifiable way, and there's a market, they should not be excluded from that market. So I think the bill probably needs a little more work. It's a bit of a work in progress, but I certainly want, again, if I were to rewrite the whole issue about whether there should even be an offset market, that's a different story. But that train is way out of the station. So given that, I want to make sure that community projects, distributed generation projects, and lots of other projects can qualify on an offset market, so I'm supporting the bill.
I didn't ask if there were any other opponents. Don't see any. Other comments or questions from the committee members? Motion? Do we have a motion? And moved by Ms. Skinner. As amended. Moved by Ms. Skinner. Seconded by Ms. Brownlee. Please call the roll. Oh, would you like to close?
I think I'll just ask for your aye vote on behalf of Mr. Fuentes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please call the roll.
Chesbro?
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight? Brownlee? Brownlee, aye. Dickinson? Grove? Excuse me. Grove, no. Halderman? Halderman, no. Huffman?
Huffman?
Aye. Sorry.
Mr. Huffman, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Skinner? Skinner, aye.
That bill is out. Thank you, everyone. I will ask Ms. Skinner to present next. She's got two bills. Item 2, AB 296, and item 11, AB 982. Her bill has been pulled.
She pulled it.
It's a two-year bill. Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chair, members, I'll start with AB 296. Is that what you'd like me to start with? Okay, so it's a hot day. You're barefoot.
I wouldn't know. We've been inside.
You are standing. Imagine, okay?
Oh, paint a picture.
Visualize a hot day. You're barefoot. You are standing on grass, but in front of you is a white sidewalk and a black pavement. You need to walk. Which surface are you going to walk on? You're going to walk on the white sidewalk because it won't burn your feet. So, AB 296 basically is a bill to ask Caltrans to include in the handbook that they produce annually that gives guidance to all entities that do pavement, whether it's private sector entities, local government entities, Caltrans itself, or any other entity that basically paves, whether it's driveways, roads, sidewalks, you name it, to include in that guidance the possible ways that you can use cool pavement. Now, interestingly enough, much of the dark pavement that we have in the state, whether it's a road or a driveway, is because we add a material to make it dark. And it's when pavement first started, you had to have that material. You had no choice. We've now evolved where there's lots of different materials, and pavement does not have to be dark. Concrete pavement's not dark. Natural pavement, the source of the aggregate, a lot determines what the color of that pavement is. The dominant aggregate in California, meaning the rocks and the gravel, are light colored. If we didn't add the dark coloring, most of our pavement would be light. Now, what's the benefit of that? A cooler pavement does not degrade as fast, so you have a much longer durability. A cooler pavement, when your tire is running over it, does not degrade the tire as much, so less particulate emissions. A cooler pavement makes the community itself cooler, so you have less high heat days. So there's so many advantages. And what we're asking now is just some guidance so that pavers know the possible types of pavement that meet all of Caltrans standards that are cool. Concrete, there's a whole variety of them. So it doesn't mandate that anyone has to use it yet. It doesn't force Caltrans yet to cool pave, though I would like to. It purely puts in their papers the information that they already have of what kinds of pavement are acceptable, meet standards, and create this coolness.
Been moved and
There are a
seconded.
couple of witnesses in support, a couple experts. We'll let them talk.
Witnesses in support. Maybe, I'm going to ask my question before they talk because maybe some of them could answer the
All right.
question. We had a witness when we were talking about recycled asphalt concrete, rubberized asphalt concrete.
Yes.
That talked about how it made it nice and black. And we have obviously potential cross-medium conflict here.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to reduce the
Yeah, we don't
incentive
wanna
to
reduce-
recycle
yeah.
tires. And so if anybody's interested in
Right,
addressing
I
that.
can address that because I actually was going to carry the bill to increase the recycled, the requirement for.
Being the long-time recycler
yes.
that you are.
And actually, you can have a cool pavement that is high content of recycled tires. No,
Lawrence's suggestion is that we make them make white tires, but
No, it's not that. It's actually that, well, some of my experts can, there's all pavement, regardless of what its, unless it's concrete, regardless of what its essential material is, has a sealer. And so in the case of a pavement that is primarily from recycled tires, it still needs a sealer. Its sealer would be a low albedo or high reflectivity sealer. Thus, it would cause that pavement to be of a lighter color
so
than
it's
it
what
would
you
if
put
you
on
didn't
top.
have the sealer.
It's what you put
Correct.
on top that determines the color. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yes, first witness.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brian Sainert, and I am representing the U.S. Green Building Council California Advocacy Committee. In my real life, I'm also an architect and a sustainability consultant. As the USGB expands its knowledge of buildings, which is where it's really been concentrating its effort, it's been moving into larger community planning issues, including models for good public infrastructure. And AB 296, Cool Payments, fits that bill, because it addresses public health, air quality, and water quality issues. I was 16 years as a senior architect with SMUD's efficiency program, and during that period we did a lot of research and drew conclusions on urban heat island effect. And SMUD put into place programs around cool roofs, and that whole industry has changed over the last 10 years. There's many, many more products, and in fact it's much more typical now for architects and contractors to specify white roofs. I guess I would say almost commonplace. The USGBC and SMUD and others have addressed the larger issues of cool pavement through planting and recommendations regarding permeable pavement, but AB 296 is a real opportunity to make a difference on a grand scale. Because the bill establishes the Cool Pavements Handbook, the Cool Pavements Handbook, and there would be projects that will demonstrate the successful applications and will try the products that need to be tried and successfully show that these products and construction techniques can work. And that will lead to standardization at a giant scale throughout the state as roadways are improved and remodeled. And, of course, it's a time now when our infrastructure is going to be rebuilt over the next 10 and 20 years. So we're very much in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Andy Katz, representing Breathe California. And what I'd like to talk about is how cool pavement can help make cool air. So traditional paving practices have the effect of creating a hotter pavement, and that means that temperature of the pavement, which can go up to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, is conducting energy and heat energy into the air, and that means that's creating a hotter environment in the air that we're breathing around pavement. So in developed areas, we're seeing that air around us being hotter. The U.S. EPA funded a study that found that the ambient air temperatures were increasing by 3 degrees, or could be decreased by 3 degrees in the Sacramento metropolitan air basin, and that ground level ozone formation could be reduced by 7% if there was integration of cool pavement technology. So there's real evidence that's been verified by the United States EPA as well as the National Atmospheric Science Agencies that really shows that integrating cool pavement into our paving practices has the real potential to improve our air that we breathe, that our kids breathe, and will reduce in asthma attacks and other conditions that result from ozone formation. So I strongly encourage the committee to adopt this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
My name is Tom Teets with the California Nevada Cement Association. We represent all the cement manufacturers in the state of California. We believe that cities in California have a unique opportunity to address greenhouse gas reduction measures through the use of cool pavements and cool roofs. Roughly a third of the average city is paved, and if these cities use rehabilitation processes for their pavements, we believe not only can these reductions be made in terms of heat, but there are also other advantages inherent with cool pavements. These include things like less maintenance over time. Traditionally, a cool pavement, a concrete pavement, such as a sidewalk you may see stamped in many old cities, that's, say, 1924. Cities with sidewalks built in the 20s are evidence of pavements that have not been needed to be resealed or recoated or darkened over time, but continue to prove to be a solution that's possible today. And that's been proven with concrete streets and highways that have far existed or beyond their design life over time. They also, in requiring less maintenance, need less traffic congestion and also less air pollution that will result. Another item is that more reflective pavements can also reduce the energy required to light these surfaces at night. And typically that's about a 30% reduction, both for highways and for parking lots. So it's the position of the California Nevada Cement Association that while we're in a time of real transition here for the cities to be looking at ways to address greenhouse gas emissions while grappling with poor road conditions, that this is an opportune time to put all of these together to start making a difference. So the one thing we would require or encourage in moving forward is even more aggressive legislation that looks at the incentives currently found in SB 375 and look at ways in which cool pavements can be integrated into that language or explored in other fashions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but what about all the sunglasses we're going to have to be wearing at night? You know, just kidding.
We're not asking for bright white.
Okay. Next speaker, and I'll ask folks to be brief because we're getting down to the late hour here.
Dan Cobb, Youth Concerned Scientist. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness.
Jenna Price on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League in support.
Thank you.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, I hope you haven't tired of my face, in support for the California League of Conservation Voters, as well as Michael Endicott, who seems to have been caught in the crosshairs of committees, and he's with Sierra Club.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't shoot the witnesses. Yes.
Durfee. On behalf of the California building officials, we have interest in the building standards that would result from the passage of this bill. We think it's a positive thing in the building community, so we ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other witnesses in favor? Witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman and members, Barry Brokaw on behalf of the Asphalt Pavement Association of California. I was coming up here to say we're now neutral on the bill on the basis of the amendments made last week, and I'll keep that position as well. I won't argue about the merits between black and white components, but with the amendments that were made, making this a study and a pilot program bill, we're very interested in working with the author, and we support the bill moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, comments, motion? Oh, the bill's been moved and seconded. Ms. Grove.
I just have a concern just because I look at things, and if you have a white road or a light colored gray road and you have white lines that divide it for safety reasons to keep people, I mean, are you anticipating coloring the change of the lines as well? I mean,
Well,
for safety?
we would obviously, have right now, Highway 5, for example, a good deal of it is concrete. It is not a dark paved surface. It is a light colored surface. And it has a different color line so that you can see it. So while we don't have those specifications in our pavement manuals, we practice it, and Caltrans is obviously both the designer and the maintainer of Highway 5, so they clearly know how to have a lighter colored road and still have proper safety markings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, please call the roll.
Chesbro?
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight? Brownlee? Brownlee, aye. Dickinson? Grove? Grove, no. Halderman? Halderman, no. Huffman? Huffman, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye.
That bill is out.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 11, AB 982. Please present.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair, members. Okay. First, I want to thank the committee staff for their thoughtful work on this measure. I will be accepting the amendments that are noted on page 4 of the analysis. What my bill does is it asks State Lands Commission to make their best efforts to enter into an MOU with the federal government for the purpose of creating what we're calling renewable energy parks. But technically what we really mean is that there's many areas of land in our state that are kind of a patchwork of parcels. A little bit is owned by the state of California, a little bit's owned by a private sector entity, a little bit's owned by the federal government, say BLM or some other entity. So it's a whole mishmash. And what this would allow, and those areas may have great potential for renewable energy generation, whether it's solar, wind, you name it. But it's very difficult to put together the project because you have all these different landowners. So what this bill does is basically ask state lands and the federal government to work together to try to get a good MOU so that we can consolidate sufficient parcels or land to be able to have our renewable energy projects that meet the different goals the state has. I have with me today Arthur Haubenstock from BrightSource and other witnesses in support, and I'll let them speak to it.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you very much for the opportunity. We are a large-scale solar power tower technology right now underway in Ivanpah, California, is the world's largest solar power technology, and we're very excited about bringing that to California's energy grid. In the process of looking for sites throughout California, we saw that there were slivers of California state land in particular that were not being put to economic use that had great potential for renewable energy, some of which had great potential for mitigation, and if they were consolidated, could actually be put to use. And so we were very excited about this bill and the opportunity to make those lands actually serve California's renewable energy and other goals.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Erin Niemelo with Large Scale Solar in support of the bill.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Other supporters? Opposition? Discussion? Yes, Ms. Grove.
Sorry, Ms. Skinner. I am going to support your bill, so we'll start there. And I appreciate you taking the amendments that we offered, because I just want to specify that it's page 5, line 22 through 25 that you're removing from the bill. Because unless you have other evidence, there has never been a groundwater contamination by any fossil fuels drilling.
Yes, we are removing that language.
So that the statement in there would be incorrect. So you are taking that out?
Yes,
Thank
and I
you.
appreciate your consultant's identification of that problematic language.
Okay, thank you, and I'd be glad to support your bill.
Yes, Ms. Brownlee.
Wait, I think we talked about this earlier, but just wanted to confirm that I think this bill really is a win-win bill, because not only is it good for the environment, but it could have some help towards schools. So I just wanted to reaffirm that if this bill goes into effect, any money would go into the CalSTRS fund, and also if it became a revenue-generating locale, that revenue-generating formula would also go into CalSTRS as well.
Yes, because the bill doesn't modify at all existing law, and existing law has the leases that state lands, a revenue that state lands receives from leases of these type of projects do go into those school funds. So, and that is the way the law is currently written, and I don't modify that.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Please call the roll. You want to close?
I appreciate the committee's work, the Republican consultants' work, and take the amendments, and I respectfully ask for your I vote.
Okay, now call the roll.
Do pass as amended. Chesbro?
Aye.
Chesbro, aye. Knight? Knight, aye. Brownlee? Brownlee, aye. Dickinson? Grove? Grove, aye. Halderman? Halderman, aye. Huffman? Huffman, aye. Monning? Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye.
Woohoo! Bipartisan vote. That bill is out. And I do believe the last remaining bill is Speaker Pettis' bill, and I'm going to present on his behalf, and I'll ask my vice chair when I can get him back up here to take the gavel.
Okay, here we go. The last bill is going to be from Speaker Perez. And Chair Chesbro is going to do AB 1019.
So you think working for the Speaker is all glory, but Mr. Price has been sitting here all afternoon waiting for me to present this. Chair and members, AB 1019 is cleanup legislation to the bill the Speaker carried last year, AB 2398 establishing a statewide program to collect and recycle waste carpet. AB 2398 was supported by the carpet industry and signed into law. State buildings are a major generator of waste carpet, and for that reason, last year's bill required the Department of General Services to manage waste carpet in state buildings in a manner consistent with the new law, making the state practice what we're mandating others to do. AB 1019 clarifies that DGS must meet this requirement by January 1st, 2014. The date is 20 months after carpet manufacturers are required to implement their plans to increase collection and recycling of waste carpets. I'm sure we'll all agree that the state, as well as the private sector,
The bill's been moved. The bill has been moved.
The bill has
And
no opposition.
seconded.
I ask for your aye vote, and that's my close. We do have witness.
If we have witnesses in support,
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, Casey Kaneko of Suter and Associates on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco in support. Thank you.
thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? And you've already closed, and it's been moved and seconded. Committee? Call the roll.
Do pass Chesbro? Chesbro, aye. Knight?
Aye.
Knight, aye. Brownlee? Brownlee, aye. Dickinson? Grove? Grove, aye. Halderman? Huffman? Huffman, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Skinner? Skinner, aye.
Yes. Okay, well, we're going to go through the on-call measures, and then we will open the roll on the bills that passed, but that people haven't had a chance to add on yet. So, let's start with on-call measures. Want me to go ahead and Okay, we will begin with item number 5, AB 723 Bradford. Current vote is 2 ayes and 2 noes. Please open the roll, lift the call.
AB 723, it was due pass to appropriations. Absent members, Ms. Brownlee. Ms. Brownlee is an aye. Mr. Dickinson. Mr. Monning. Mr. Monning is an aye. Ms. Skinner.
This is AB 723.
AB 723, item number 5.
Item 5.
Ms. Skinner is an aye. Mr. Dickinson, we're voting on AB 723 Bradford. Item number 5. Aye. Bill's out.
Bill's out. Next, we'll have item number 3, AB 442, Mr. Silva. The current vote is 3-1.
Item number 3, Brownlee. Brownlee's a not voting. Dickinson. Who else? And Ms. Skinner. Not voting. I'm sorry, not voting for Mr. Dickinson. That bill failed.
Okay, we're going to do this with any other bill that fails as well, but we'll grant, if there's no objection, we'll grant reconsideration, and that will allow, there was discussion for those of you that weren't in the room at the time about it, making it a 2-year bill and working with, I'm sorry, I'm getting my bills mixed up here. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead to Olson. I take all that back. I was on the wrong bill. So that bill fails. But we will grant reconsideration. If there's no objection. Next is item 4, AB 644, Mr. Blumenfield. The current vote is 4-3.
And it was due pass as amended. Ms. Brownlee. Ms. Brownlee is an aye. And Ms. Skinner. Ms. Skinner is an aye.
That bill's out. Item 6 is AB 796, Mr. Blumenfield. The current vote is 4-2.
That bill, that action was due pass also as amended. Brownlee. Brownlee is an aye. Halderman. Huffman. Huffman, aye. Bill's out.
My bill is out. Substitute my prior remarks to the next item. This is item 9, AB 890, Olson, which currently has 3 votes. And I did suggest to Ms. Olson, that Assemblywoman Olson, that we would grant reconsideration if she doesn't have the votes, make it a 2-year bill, and work with her on trying to make that bill workable so we can pass it out of the committee next year. So please call the roll.
Brownlee. This is, Assembly Bill 890. Ms. Brownlee is not voting. Mr. Huffman. And Ms. not voting. And Ms. Skinner not voting.
That bill fails, and we, if there's no objection, do grant reconsideration. So that's all of the bills that were on call, and we can, the quickest, most efficient way is for those of you that have missed votes to come over and let her go through one bill at a time and have everybody add on to each bill, and we will try to await Ms. Olson as well, depending on how long she is. I miss Dr. Halderman.
John's going to call the office.
Okay. All right. Let's start with